First of all, I just want to get your thoughts on the WA or specifically the Perth lockdown. Is this how you think it should be going forward, given the fact there's only one case so far? These ad hoc shutdowns, is this how you think it should be going forward?
Well, I don't like the term ad hoc. I think there is some science behind what's going on in Perth, and it makes sense to me. And we saw a version of this play out earlier in the year in Brisbane. After what happened in Victoria last year, I think the lesson that has been learned around the country is that when you get cases of this kind, and there's obviously a great degree of anxiety about the UK strain and its potential to spread, but when you get cases, you go hard and you go early. That's the way in which you contain it to make sure that you don't have a wider outbreak. And that's what we saw play out in Brisbane earlier in the year, and that's what we're seeing play out in Perth now. And I think people would much prefer to have a short lockdown at the start than the kind of protracted lockdown that we saw in Victoria when the virus got out in larger numbers. So I can understand the decisions that are being made.
Why not something a little more measured, though, and kind of mirror what the contact tracers have been able to do in New South Wales, so you can have both?
Well, I think what has been learnt in the experience of the last year is that to have a lockdown within the area that is impacted by this, across the city where the case has been found, and that's what we saw in Brisbane earlier in the year, and that's what we're now seeing in Perth now, is best practice. Like, that's what the medical advice is in terms of how to deal with this. That's why I don't think it's fair to describe it as ad hoc. There's a whole lot of medical advice which underpins this. And going hard, going early is the way in which the best advice says we make sure this doesn't get out at a broader level, because we all understand what the cost of that would be.
OK, just onto your new super portfolio now. Do you accept that it's ruffled feathers within the shadow cabinet?
No, the portfolio is about making a statement and putting a focus from the opposition on the question of jobs. Making it clear that what we intend to talk about and prosecute between now and the next election is the whole question of jobs and secure employment in this country. And we're doing that because right now we're seeing more than 2 million Australians looking for work who are either unemployed or underemployed. And there's been a persistently large number of people who have been underemployed throughout the period that Scott Morrison has been Prime Minister, even predating the COVID-19 crisis. So jobs is what it's about, and it's about that in the short term, making sure that small business, which is the engine room of our economy, keeps going, and that we don't lose whole swathes of our small business as a result of COVID-19. And that's why it's really important that JobKeeper continues to be in place so long as the effects of COVID-19 are being experienced. And what we've just talked about in Perth is an example of the fact that we're not through this yet. But it's also talking about in the long term. We need to be having an eye to the future about how we build and develop an economy which generates secure, permanent jobs going forward, and this government just doesn't think about it.
So just to clarify, do you want JobKeeper to remain in place until the pandemic is over, which could be a year, it could be 2 years away? Is that what you've got in mind?
JobKeeper and its transition needs to be tailored to the reality of the circumstances. Now, if you're in tourism, if you're in aviation, the fact of the matter is things are not back to normal. They're nowhere near normal. And that's why JobKeeper and how it plays out from here needs to take account of that. That's the point that we're making. Arbitrary cut-offs, which put businesses in a situation where they're not back to normal, there's no hope of them being able to conduct the kind of businesses that they had prior to COVID-19 without any assistance, is going to mean those businesses go under. And if that happens, we'll lose sections of our small business landscape, but we'll lose the jobs that go with it. And small business is the engine room, is the major employer of this economy.
OK, that's a blank cheque, is what you're saying.
It's not a blank cheque at all. It's about saying you look at what is the reality of the way in which we are coming through COVID-19, what parts of the economy are being affected, and then you tailor the transition of JobKeeper accordingly. That's the point that we're making. But if you get that wrong, and if you don't tailor the transition of JobKeeper according to the reality of what's being experienced in the economy, then you're going to see really significant job losses.
Okay.
And it's really critical that that not happen in a circumstance where there are 2 million Australians today looking for work.
Okay, a couple of figures that have been published this morning from the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. They say that job seeker people should get a $10 a day rise. So basically they'd be living on $50 a day. And then for JobKeeper, any business that has had a 1/3 reduction in profits, then each employee should get a bonus, if I can put it that way, of $450 a week. What do you make of those figures? Do you accept them?
Well, I think what you're going to see is groups within our economy and our community coming up with ways in which you try and tailor the transition of JobKeeper in the way I've described in circumstances where what the government's flagging is the removal completely of JobKeeper at the end of March. And in relation to job seeker, we've been saying for a long time that there needs to be an increase in New Start, that the base rate of New Start before COVID-19 struck was just too low. So this kind of conversation doesn't surprise me.
So up to $50 a day, would that be something that you'd accept?
Well,
for
I mean,
JobKeeper?
I'm not about to go through what our position would be in detail in relation to each of those measures, but the point is I would expect that kind of conversation to be happening within our community in circumstances where what the government's flagging is an end to JobKeeper at the end of March.
Okay, just another item we've got this morning, Richard. New Zealand's Trade Minister has said that with more diplomacy and respect, our relationship with China would be better off. What do you make of those comments? Do you agree with them, or do you think New Zealand needs a backbone?
It's not quite how I would characterise our situation, but our relationship with China is really important. That's to state the obvious. It's a mutual relationship, but we need to enter into that relationship on terms where we make it abundantly clear to China that we value the relationship. And it's got to be possible to make that comment without it being controversial in Australia. We obviously need to value the relationship with China.
That's despite their 14 grievances.
China is our largest trading partner. And we've got to make sure that we are doing everything we can to have that relationship in the best place. Now, right now what we've seen is a government which has been unable to manage that relationship. And there are thousands of jobs at stake as a result. I was visiting an abattoir last year where hundreds of people have already lost their job because of what's happened in relation to our trading relationship with China. It's our largest trading partner, and it's critically important that we see this government manage that relationship properly. Right now, there is not a single personal relationship of substance that exists between a senior member of the Morrison government and a senior member of the Chinese government. That's unprecedented in terms of Australian history since the recognition of the PRC. I mean, governments past have been able to maintain those relationships, and it's got to be possible to say that with all the difficulties, and there are many, and with all the complexities, and I acknowledge them all, that we start from a position of valuing the relationship with our largest trading partner.